Yeah, so then Pierre said, no, let's try to ask him for an interview. Then we were talking about this idea that basically when people go out in cafes or something, they don't discuss important things anymore. It's only to talk, people want to talk about shopping.
The easy part is that the art object, the artist's work presents us many times not only with a way of looking at our own world, but also at looking at a world that we may fear, or we may have lost, or we may want to have. That is the utopian aspect in the artistic message. Are they closing? That is the utopian aspect of the artistic message, and I think that if the artist emphasized more on that and gave people an idea of different choices, a different path to go, that would, I think, that would help, and that would allow the artist to maintain his or her position in the world. I find it complicated at the moment, because we have, on the one hand, the commercialization of art. We have turned art into, most art works into objects of the commercial market, and the value of a work of art is no longer its epistemological opening up of a new world. It is measured in euros or dollars that are being paid for it at auctions. You see, that kind of commercialization is a threat, it seems to me, to art. It would be nice, as Marx had suggested, that we would use technology not to enframe the world, but rather to liberate man from menial labor. So let the robots, construct the cars, fine, and use the time freed thereby from human labor to develop the artistic potential that is in every person, you see. But that, it seems to me, is indeed a utopian vision, but not so unimaginable as it may sound. The reason is the following. At a meeting of significant, we call them captains of industry, in San Francisco a few years ago, they mentioned that in a number of years, they didn't exactly say when, but not in the not so distant future, there would not be enough labor around anymore to employ enough people, because we would have delegated already enough work to the robots, and the rest would be done in some corners of not as yet emerging countries, and for the rest, there wouldn't be enough labor around anymore. They call it the 80-20 society. That is to say, 80% of the population would no longer work, and 20%, yeah, that's right, 80% would no longer work, and only 20% would run the place, would run the world, you see. And now let us assume that came. Let us assume these captains of industry were correct, that there isn't enough labor around anymore. What do we do with the 80% that do not work anymore? You see? that watch the other 20% working. What do we do? I mean, there are basically there are only three possibilities. Either we give them enough drugs so that they sleep all day, we train them to organize revolution, or we try to develop their artistic and other potential that's in them that is not gainful labor, but that is another way of being in the world, namely as an artist. And so perhaps the dialectic, of development will work in such a way that that something nobody will have planned will nevertheless happen. That is to say that we will, through technology, arrive at a situation where indeed we do not have to be subject to menial labor anymore, and we can become creative animals, creative people in our societies. Perhaps that would mean that Marx in the end was right. You see, he would have liked the idea if it came to that he would have been vindicated that way. That that would be the way to go. So, a last word perhaps on the Zeitgeist is, when you look at the three things that we've been talking about, you could come to the conclusion that the only way to be today for an intellectual is to be a cultural pessimist. Cultural pessimism is a zeitgeist, that we have had. We've had in Europe, and it has led to two devastating wars. So this kind of cultural pessimism. Therefore, I think we should not engage in cultural pessimism. I think what we should do is we should look at Sisyphus, in the myth of Sisyphus, and go with Camus when he says, at the last sentence of that book, one must consider Sisyphus to be happy. That is to say, we strive seemingly in vain, in a futile enterprise, to make this life on this earth possible and sustainable, etc. And every time we arrive at a particular goal, this rock rolls down the hill again, and we start again anew. And Camus says we should take pride in this effort, and we should derive our dignity from this effort against all odds that there might be. We should consider ourselves lucky, happy, and not pessimistic.